Hello, everyone. Dr. Morton here. So, I wanted to take a little bit of time and dig a little deeper into social equity and public budgeting. And I'm going to tell you right now, I kind of smashed two presentations together, and you can tell. One is just on like social equity, and the other one is on social equity and public budgeting. So, keep that in mind as we move through. My presentation theme does not match great. But anyway, so I'm going to talk a little bit about social equity and public budgeting, and this will probably be a fairly lengthy PowerPoint presentation, so keep that in mind as we move through. I am going to turn off my video because it can take a lot longer to upload to the course when I have video. Okay, so let's talk about what is social equity. Now you're going to notice that there's a little video up in the corner there, and you're not going to be able to play that from this present audio video presentation. I am just going to share the PowerPoint, and you can view that video if you would like. It does a really good job of explaining what social equity and equality and social justice mean, the differences between the two. I do find that for some reason, some people find it very offensive to watch children on a playground try to break down barriers. Um, I'm not sure why, but again, social equity is a real thing and it's impacted by real systems that we have in place here in our country. So, again, if you would like, please view the little video. It's very simple. It's a cartoon and it's kind of very simple in that way, but it is very good at explaining equality, equity, social justice concepts. So what is social equity? I find that students are often confused because they think that social equity and equality are the same thing, and they're not. Because social equity, it recognizes that people come from different circumstances and they have different levels of need. Multimillionaires, billionaires have different levels of need than someone who lives in a rural southeastern Oklahoma and makes minimum wage and doesn't even have a full-time job. And I'm not saying that person anything negative about that person because there are a lot of limitations living in rural southern Oklahoma. And if you're not well educated and you don't have resources, that's what social equity does. It recognizes that. Um, and it's focused on addressing imbalances and disparities in our social systems. So, public policy, it's focused on improving outcomes for all Americans that can improve social equity. Um, so public budgeting plays a key role in promoting social equity by um, allocating resources to address disparities and meet the diverse needs of communities. I want to just share some social equity factors, factors that can influence a person's ability to be successful and to thrive. That includes your education, race, environment, poverty, the justice system, your access to things like healthcare, food insecurity, housing instability, job instability. All of these are social equity factors. So we know that education and social equity are connected. Um, Access to quality education early is linked to success throughout life. And we know that higher educated individuals earn more over their lifetime. And we know that education quality is often lower in poor neighborhoods and that this limits the ability of children to thrive. So, how is this connected to public budgeting? I'm going to dig a little deeper on this particular slide because here in my community, and I assume in most communities, local schools are supported by ad valorem or property taxes. And if you live in a very poor community that doesn't have expensive homes, your property taxes are going to be much lower and you're going to have less money to invest in a quality education system. You're going to have less money to invest in quality educators. So, it's really important that we understand that having a quality education and educate public education that is well funded is incredibly important to help people be successful throughout their lives. So here is where people often get uncomfortable because I'm going to dig into the fact that race and social equity are connected. Um, How? Because race is linked to things like an individual socioeconomic status. It's linked to disparities in health outcomes and access to quality health care. It's linked to income disparity because Black and Hispanic households earn about half as much as the average white household. And we know that wealth inequality continues to grow in the US. We know that we see a disproportionate amount of people of color represented in the criminal justice system. So we know that race can be a limiting factor when considering how someone is able to be successful and access resources in their community. The environment we live in even impacts social equity. We know that poor neighborhoods often experience crime and violence in higher numbers. We know that poor neighborhoods are more often exposed to air and noise pollution. Poor neighborhoods have limited access to healthy food options, they have limited public transportation options, and they have limited quality housing. All of this impacts someone's ability to fully thrive and be a successful member of their community. Let's take on the air and noise pollution. Poor communities, often communities of color, have historically been pushed out to the least desirable areas in a community, and that might be near industry or an airport. Airport, and all of these have detrimental impacts on the people living in those areas. And maybe the neighborhood doesn't have a grocery store with fresh food options, fresh fruit and vegetable options. Maybe in a poor neighborhood where most of the inhabitants don't have a car they can rely on, they have limited public transportation options. And all of this can impact their ability to have a job that they can go to help support themselves to be successful. We also know that the justice system and social equity are connected. And this is another topic that makes people uncomfortable. But incarceration statistics demonstrate inequity in the criminal justice system. We know that Black and Latinx make up 30% of the population, but 51% of those incarcerated. Um, in my in my state of Oklahoma, um, Blacks are less than 8% of our population, but about 27% of those that are incarcerated. This is a disproportionate outcome where we would see that negative outcomes do not line up with, you know, population statistics. So, sentencing for people of color also demonstrates inequality and inequity in our criminal justice systems. So, decision makers can design policies through a social equity lens and improve outcomes for minority and marginalized communities. So, here we really get down to the key element of what we're talking about we're talking about social equity. One of the driving forces here is poverty. Uh, Reducing poverty would improve social equity. Reducing child poverty would be especially impactful because childhood poverty has a long term impact on health, well being, and earning potential. So, addressing the previous topics we talked about would positively impact poverty and social equity. Better designed, more robust social safety net programs reduce social inequities. So let me just give you some information from the work that I do as a qualitative researcher in state government. We know that programs like SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition and Assistance Program, we know that children who are dealing with poverty but have access to SNAP benefits, they do better in school. They make better grades. They're more likely to graduate from high school. They're more likely to attend college. They're more likely to have stable jobs as adults. They're more healthy. However, that investment takes time for us to see the positive outcomes associated with that. And I often get people that disagree that more robust social safety net programs would reduce social inequities. But I promise you that the evidence is out there to support this. We deal with a lot of issues like benefits, the benefit cliff. I'm not going to go into that. That's just a full-on social equity discussion. But things like the benefit cliff, um, poorly designed policy programs that are so difficult for people to enroll in that they give up and they just struggle. There's so many issues that is associated with the poor design of our social safety net programs that if we had a more robust system, we would see such an improvement in income or, excuse me, outcomes for individuals that we would save money eventually because we would be positively impacting children's futures. So let's jump into connecting social equity and public budgeting. One of the ways that is connected is through resource allocation. So, public budgets determine funding for essential services like education, healthcare, housing, and transportation. All of those are items that I've touched on in the social equity portion. So, equitable budgeting helps ensure that resources are distributed based on a community's needs, addressing disparities that disproportionately affect marginalized groups. We know that this is a reality. We see it in statistics. If we increase funding for under-resourced schools, we can help bridge educational gaps linked to race and income. I'm not going to have audio on each of these sources slides. They're just sources of evidence where you could learn more about the specific topic that I have addressed in the previous slide. So, social equity and public budgeting are connected through tax policy and income disparity. So, our tax structure significantly impacts social equity because we have a lot of regressive taxes, such as flat sales taxes, that place a heavier burden on lower income individuals, and that makes income inequality worse. Progressive tax systems, which tax higher incomes at higher rates, can help reduce disparities by redistributing wealth through social programs. And I know that there's a claim that the U.S. tax structure is progressive, but in many instances, it's really not very progressive. But I'm not going to go into that here. You can read more about that in some of the resources in the course. So, social equity and public budgeting are connected through wealth and income gaps as well. So, historical systemic barriers, including discriminatory housing and labor practices, have contributed to persistent racial wealth gaps. Again, we see it in the statistics. If you don't believe me, look at some of the numbers. Public budgeting can counteract these inequities by prioritizing investments in affordable housing, job training, and healthcare programs targeting disadvantaged communities. I wanted to add on here that many social safety net programs have job requirements that to be on the program, you have to have a job. However, we just don't invest enough in adequate job training to connect people to higher paying work. So, social equity and public budgeting are connected through sustaining the social safety net. Programs like SNAP, Medicaid, and TANF rely on public funding. Um, and there's much evidence to support, again, SNAP specifically, that it has positive impacts over time. Adequate and equitable budget allocations ensure that safety nets are robust enough to support vulnerable populations, mitigating the effects of economic hardship and promoting upward mobility. Finally, I'm going to end with tax reform as a tool for social equity. Thoughtful tax reforms, such as expanding the earned income tax credit, reducing reliance on regressive taxes, and increasing taxes on wealth, can promote fairness. When paired with equitable budgeting, these reforms help create opportunities and improve outcomes for historically disadvantaged groups. Um, if we want all Americans to have the opportunity to be successful and to thrive, we have to consider how taxation and tax reform can be a tool for that. We have to consider that through the lens of social equity. So if you have questions or you have concerns or you would like a little more information, you can shoot me an email. You can reach me through the Canvas inbox, and I can answer your questions or provide you access to other resources that could perhaps answer your question. So thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Have a good day.